here's Brody Brazil.
So I've got to begin with some full context on when I'm actually recording this video. Right now, we're only a handful of days and games into the first ever Four Nations face-off. In fact, last night, Canada and the U.S. had a match for the ages. So I don't know how the rest of this tournament goes or how it concludes, but that established, I can already confidently tell you there's 5 things I've learned from this tournament. There's definitely at least these 5 takeaways that I will have no matter how it ends up, no matter who is the ultimate winner of the very first ever Four Nations face-off. And in no particular order, I'll give you these 5 things, but I think we should start with this one because it is glaringly obvious. The NHL can never go back, and I can't even say this with a straight face, they can never go back to the traditional All-Star Game format. I mean, think about what we've seen so far in this Four Nations face-off tournament and compare that to the fastest skater competition, or the most accurate passer competition, or the hardest shot competition, or the All-Star mini game tournament format, whatever they were doing in recent years. It's just that once we've now seen this, like the Four Nations face-off, it's going to be hard to go back. And actually, like that might be a problem for the NHL because they figured this out. Now they have to also figure out how to not burn everybody out on it. More on that in just a second. That'll also be a point. But every other pro sports league envies this solution that the NHL has for its, whatever you want to call it, all-star period festivities. So whether it's an all-star week, weekend, a Pro Bowl type situation for football, every other league would love to find a solution, kind of like what satisfies all the fans here of the NHL, is to have this Four Nations face-off. Best on best has been a long-standing request, not only of fans, but also players enjoy this. Players wanted to see this tournament. So my point is, it's a good thing that the NHL has figured this out. It's a great thing that they're kind of the only league. And I say that, but like baseball has the World Baseball Classic, but they still do an All-Star Game, and they don't really love their All-Star Game. The NBA All-Star Game is going on as I'm recording this very weekend, right here in my backyard in San Francisco in Northern California. And it comes with criticism that there's nothing new. It's getting stale. The NHL does not have that problem. Now it's a matter of how do they keep this momentum going. Certainly it's an enviable position to be in for this NHL league. The intensity might be unexpected in this tournament, like the physicality, the play, the level of play, but that's also the best part. I mean, let's not forget, 2 to 3 weeks ago, before any of this started, and you heard about players with nagging injuries who were going to have to bow out of the tournament, or they were undecided on how exactly this would go. There was some bubble type situations. There were articles and questions, 2 weeks ago, about how serious NHL players would take this tournament. Now that we're seeing it, it seems like they've all officially or unofficially agreed, like we're going all out in this thing. And nothing's going to ever top the Stanley Cup. I think we should also understand that too. If you're a player, this is right here, right now, right in front of you. How could you not compete for it? But I think ultimately their goal, nobody's going to be heartbroken if they lose Four Nations, if the trade-off was they stay healthy and win the Stanley Cup. So the Stanley Cup will always be hanging over any professional or Olympic hockey tournament because the Stanley Cup is always going to mean something necessarily more and different. I take it back. Like winning Olympic gold, winning an Olympic medal every 4 years, that's a once-in-a-lifetime, sometimes opportunity. But my point is, here for this tournament, the Stanley Cup is always going to take priority to winning a Four Nations face-off. So the intensity that I think we're seeing is higher than most expected. It's probably among the highest you're going to get. I don't know that anybody is taking this tournament easy. And I do think NHL players have the ability to make it seem like the effort is there, even when the effort is dialed down to about 80%, to try and fake it and make it look 100%. I feel like the effort and what we're seeing both at 100% for this tournament. Point number, is this 3? The NHL has to avoid burnout and an excess of this format. And I only say that because, do you remember, 15, 20 years ago when the outdoor games were first established and how popular they were the first few seasons? They were a commodity. They were something very popular, got the hockey fan into those games, got the non-hockey fan into those games. But now you've got this Four Nations tournament, and it is exciting. Again, for hockey fans and even for casual fans or non-fans. They're interested. They're talking about these games and this tournament. but you got to find a way, and really you have to find a frequency of what years to play these four-nation face-off tournaments, because if you do it every year, for example, if it's four nations, Olympics, four nations, Olympics, that's a lot of 3 years in a row of this tournament, and I do fear for the fatigue factor, that fans are going to say, well, we just saw this last year. You have to, in my opinion, probably keep it every other year. Maybe you do Olympics, four nations, World Cup of Hockey, then four nations, then back to Olympics. Does that make sense, that sequencing? It would still have more four nations than anything else, but at least you wouldn't be doing it every single season and also mid-season every single season. So there is a way to alternate this. I certainly hope the NHL realizes what they have, but they don't oversaturate what they have. And I realize potential injuries are always going to be like literally the only question mark of this tournament. You already saw Shea Theodore get hurt, and I hope that by the time you're watching this video, there's nobody else who's got an upper or lower body injury and misses the tournament or misses any NHL regular season games, because these tournament games, they're all right before the trade deadline of the NHL this year, but they're still also ahead of the stretch run and teams with playoff ambitions. And you'd hate to think that somebody is bound to their team for 82 games. They went out and played a handful of games in this Four Nations tournament. They were key to their team. Like, this is all the best players here. And somebody got hurt, and it changed somebody's chances just because of this tournament. I don't want this tournament to have a dark shadow cast on it, right, because of an injury situation, but this is always going to be the what if. This is going to be the risk. This is going to be the chance that teams and players take. Injuries are inevitable. Somebody might get hurt playing hockey. They might get hurt slipping and falling out of the shower. Knock on wood. I hope that doesn't happen. But the point is, like, this tournament can always be held accountable, even if it's nobody's necessarily fault. This tournament must evolve, and I do think in two different ways. I think the first way might make it become the Six Nations face-off. Now, we should establish this. Russia alone, I know that's the number one suggestion of the next team to join. We understand why they're not included in this right now with the political and world climate, but it just feels like this tournament eventually, when the time is right, would become more legitimate, and when the climate allows for it to have more teams, more countries participate. But even past Russia, right? Like, we need to ask ourselves the next question. So who are the next, country or two, if it's Russia or not Russia? How do you go from 4 to 6? How do you field proper teams? Because right now, these four nations, very competitive, and they haven't all played each other yet. But the point is, it's all very competitive as we've seen it so far. How do you do this? How do you introduce a fifth? Because I think we know who that could be. Who would be the sixth after that? I also think, as much as we can talk about diversifying the participating countries, how about the locations? Now, I had this thought, and I'm saying this just for myself, from myself, not my employer, not anybody else. How cool would it be the next time they do this Four Nations face-off to have it? And I realize you have to do this probably in North America for the time zone, time change difference, and the health of the players and all that. How about Vancouver, San Jose? We would love to host that Four Nations face-off. Again, I'm saying that for me. I'm saying that as a suggestion, just putting that out there in the atmosphere. I would love to see a Four Nations tournament here in the Bay Area. I think the excitement, the growth it could cause, the attention, and I know this region would pull it off in the right way. So I would love to see something like that. Anyway, again, we're not even like at the halfway point. We're not even at the Boston part of the Four Nations face-off yet. But I think these 5 things, they really stand out already. I think they're going to be big points by the end of this tournament. Maybe we'll learn something else. Maybe you've learned something else about this tournament. I'd love to hear about it in the comments section down below. Also, while you're down there, thumbs up on this video. That helps me, this video, and this channel. And one more thing, don't forget to go down there and hit that subscribe button. That way I can definitely see you back here next time.